Hey guys, hope you're having a great day. Thank you for checking out the video. I really do appreciate all the support. I am a small channel, so it means a lot. And I'm sorry I've been missing in action a little bit. My computer just freaked out on me. I had to reset it, and then after that, my webcam was having problems. I actually got a new webcam. Things have been fine. Anywho, as quick as possible, I want to give a brief sort of synopsis of what I think about the card, give my first impressions, and sort of hypothesize maybe what deck it'll slot into. So covering all of the mythics of the set, we'll start here with Bright Glass Gearhulk. Here is a 4/4 for 4. It is 2 greens and 2 whites, which is definitely limiting in what decks it can fit into, but maybe Selesnya has some artifact thing going on. But basically, yeah, that first strike trample, pretty good combination, not the craziest thing on a 4/4, but let's keep reading. When it enters, search your library for 2 artifacts, creatures, and or enchantment cards. So any of those combinations. But they have to be mana value 1 or less, then shuffle. So basically this remains, you know, you get like an Authority of the Consuls, right? That's a good enchantment. If there's a really good artifact that gets introduced, maybe you could go and get those. There's already some that are pretty relevant. And there's got to be some creatures you'd want to just sort of get into your hand, maybe slap down as some chunk blockers. I can't really think of any creatures off the top of my head that would be like so good with like a 4/4 Selesnya card. So this is really dependent, I'll say, on what those 1-drops will end up being. So let's move on to the next card. So next up we have Chandra, the Spark Hunter. This does actually come in with 4 loyalty, which is pretty good because it has a -7 and a +2. So let's keep reading. It is a 4-cost planeswalker, so you know there's a lot of contention in the 4-drop slot, but it does have a passive ability. At the beginning of your combat, you can choose up to 1 target vehicle. That vehicle just becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. So the haste is actually pretty good, because you can lay a vehicle if you don't already have one the turn after, and then just immediately give it haste and start synergizing. But that can actually be pretty damn good, because there are some pretty huge vehicles with a lot of upside. But basically that +2, though, is card advantage if you sacrifice artifacts. So those could be your vehicles, any sort of smaller, like, 1-drop guy, you know, artifact that might be doing something that you don't need anymore. This can, you know, you can sacrifice it, or you can just discard a card. So there's some flexibility. It's actually a pretty good +2, and the 0 is like pretty good. If you can just 0 every single turn, a 3/2 is pretty serious. Now, unfortunately, though, it's not like you get that immediate board presence because you still have to tap it, right? Like, you still have to crew it, rather. So I don't know how good it is. Like, I don't know if this slots in anything right away, that's for sure. But that -7, if you can get to it, whenever an artifact enters, just 3 damage to any target. So if you can get up to that, I think you'd be in business, but it's not like you want to plan around getting up to a Planeswalker's Ultimate, but it is a little bit more realistic than most. Loot the Pathfinder. I actually did make a quick short about this card. It is really good. It's very flexible, obviously. It has a lot going on. First of all, for 5 mana in Teamer colors, you get a 2/4. Now, it does have 3 keywords: Double Strike, Vigilance, Haste. Pretty good if you can buff it up a little bit. That Double Strike's pretty serious, and then you can block with the Vigilance, get some value with it that same turn. But really, that exhaust, the exhaust mechanic is new. So you can only use these exhaust abilities once a turn. And basically, if you can Agatha's Soul Cauldron this guy out of your graveyard, and then put all 3 of these abilities on any of your creatures with counters, dude, yeah, you already have Arcanist, the Omnipotent, which can draw 3 cards, which has already sort of been a little gimmicky combo deck going around with that. So if Teamer justifies itself with that arrangement, this would be the guy to exile with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. But yeah, 3 damage to any target, pretty serious. And then draw 3, you'd probably want to do that first, and then you can tap it next turn to 3 mana to help you cast those cards that you just drew. So that's pretty synergistic. And then later on, just like, if you can't get in a good swing, if you have a 2/4 Double Strike Vigilance, which isn't too bad, you can just tap it, rather. And the Vigilance is relevant on this guy, being that you can you need to tap him for all the abilities. Hazit Godseeker. So this has the main set mechanic on it. I'm glad I can finally talk about it, but start your engines. I'll get into that in 1 second, but it is a 2 mana, 5/3 indestructible haste. But wait, it can't attack or block unless you have max speed. So how do you get speed? Basically, whenever you lay a card that has start no engines, As it says here, if you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns whenever an opponent loses a life. So it can be multiple times a turn as long as you can have multiple instances of the opponent losing life, but it does have to be on your turn, which a lot of people I don't think caught. And max speed is 4 for all max speed cards. So basically you can get value out of this guy by paying 1 mana and tapping him to make one of your power 2 or less is unblockable. Now immediately like Arabella comes to mind because you want to have power 2 or less anyway. The Race to Pass decks would probably like something like this. Maybe they don't really play red, but if you do, this would be good. But like Arabella can go unblockable, which would be pretty serious. And that is some value. And it's basically like a ticking time bomb because eventually you get a 5/3 indestructible, which is kind of crazy. And the haste also allows you to use that ability right when you top deck it later on in the game. You can at least make one of your smaller dudes that maybe have like some sort of huge upside if they deal combat damage to an opponent. It could be good. I don't know if red's the right color for a deck like that, but nonetheless. Catch Ramosa, the New Dawn, also one of the gods from this set. Now this also has sort of a similar thing going on. It has a nice body, 4/4, for 3 mana this time though, Orzhov colors. You do get a Menace lifelink indestructible, which is kind of really damn good. That lifelink can just like completely stabilize a game, especially with that indestructible. Just, you know what I mean? It doesn't have vigilance, which would totally push it, in my opinion. But at least that menace can you maybe take out Planeswalker or something. You know what I mean? And it can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Now that does seem like a lot, but basically there's tons of cards that can exile a lot at once. You can exile like a whole graveyard, for example. One, I was listening to somebody and they pointed out a Pornoculus. A Pornoculus, you need to exile 6 cards from your graveyard to even cast that guy. So there could be like an Esper build with that sort of synergy going on, but whenever there's an instance of putting cards in exiles from your graveyard or battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life. So not only do you get a crazy creature at a good rate for not too hard of a condition, you're also drawing cards along the way, and you are losing a little bit of life, but the life link sort of offsets that. So I actually really like the design of this card. I think it's pretty elegant, and I'm more excited about this one than the last than Hazoret. Next is Oil Deep Gearhulk, and you will notice it's another 4 mana for 4 artifact creature at Mythic Rarity, but this one is Dimir color, so 2 blues, 2 blacks, as opposed to the Selesnya we just saw. When this creature enters, first of all, lifelink Ward 1, pretty good. Lifelinking is pretty good. It's better than it was in the past, I think, especially right now. We have a lot of lifelink synergy, so maybe not Dimir colors. But when it enters, you look at target player's hand. So you just get to scout all of what they're about to do. You may choose a card from it. If you do, they discard the card. So you get to pick the card as well. And they get to draw a card. So I thought it was us for 1 second. I was like, and we get to draw a card. So that's actually not as good. But, you know, you take out a Atraxa from their hand. Well, you wouldn't want to do that because they're playing reanimation spells anyway. But you take something super scary that's going to win them the game. And maybe they just top deck a land. Right? So you have a pretty good ETB. It's definitely not bad, but I don't know if this like slots into Dimir. I think there's so many good blue and black cards right now. I don't know about this one. This one I have a gut feeling is just like borderline useless. Like I think the Ward 1 is like okay. I don't know. I just don't have a good first impression of this one. And on that same note, we actually have the Grul Artifact creature at Mythic Rarity here, which is different. It's a 7/7 that cost 6 to play. So definitely easier to cast this one, being that you're in green. You can ramp, find different lands very easily, and you have more time, being that it's a higher CMC. I have a good feeling about this one, by the way. Vigilance Menace, pretty damn good. When it enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. Now that Menace is kind of crazy because like a huge board swinging with +2/+2 already scary. Every creature getting Menace, kind of almost unbeatable. Like if you have enough creatures, you know, right? If they have the same amount of creatures as you, right, without that Menace, they could potentially block all of your creatures if you're not running Trample. But now you get 50% more damage connecting. like quite literally. Maybe not exactly, right, because they're going to try to block your larger dudes, but theoretically, right? And I just think the ceiling on this is really, really high, and I think that the floor isn't super, super low. It's just like right here, and I think that, like, yeah, there's better cards to play, maybe at 6 mana, but I think that, like, in the right deck, that also maybe cares about artifact creatures and reanimating this in some way, possibly, or something. I don't know if you'd splash black for this. But this is good. This is better than the other ones, I think, even though it is more CMC. Plus, a Vigilance Menace guy by himself at 7/7 is a lot more relevant than a 4/4. Sab Sunin, man. Everyone loves this frog, not just because of her thighs, but it's really good art. A rainbow, a little city in the background, people cheering. Seems to be a good rate. Seems to be a pretty playable card. It's very interesting, though. So this is one of the gods. It's a 5-drop 6/6 Simic god. It does have Reach, Trample, and Indestructible. Indestructible just like the other ones, right? And the catch this time is it can't attack or block unless you have an even number of counters on it. So 0 is even. So she can attack or block right away. Now, I don't think a lot of people caught that. Is that, like, you don't need to put any sort of counters on her whatsoever to immediately get value. Now, this is better than the other gods, because immediately you have a 6/6 indestructible dude that can block and then represent damage next turn. Now, here's the other thing. At the beginning of your first main phase, you put a counter on her. Then, if she has an odd number of counters on her, you draw 2 cards. So isn't this cute? So, like, sometimes you won't be able to use her as a blocker, but you'll draw 2 cards, which will help you find other blockers or tempo of some kind into the Flood Ball, right? Just buy you an extra turn, stuff like that. So when you're not having a pretty insanely statted and keyword creature, you are drawing 2 cards. It does have to be at the beginning of your first main phase. So there's some, there's going to be nuance to how you put counters on her. From Snakeskin Veils to Innkeeper's Talons to literally anything. There's going to be nuance to that, and I think there's going to be an interesting little mini game around this chick for me, and I think that makes it a very cool card and a success as a card, because I don't think it's, like, busted or anything, but it's certainly interesting and certainly playable just at first glance, right? So, good job with this one. By the way, if you made it this far and you're enjoying the video, please do consider leaving a like. That'll help it get recommended to more people. I am a very small channel, so that really does make a difference. I know everyone on the planet says that, but truly. So I would hugely appreciate that. This leads us very nicely into probably the card that I'm, like, most excited to play with, because it's just very, very unique. So this is going to take a little second, but clean numbers here. 4 mana for a colorless Planeswalker called the Aether Spark. This Planeswalker also happens to be an artifact. Okay. Not only that, the subtype of this artifact is an equipment. Wow. So you have a artifact Planeswalker that's also an equipment. It comes in with 4 loyalty for 4 mana. So cool stuff so far, as long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature. The Aether Spark can't be attacked and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage, you put this many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. So basically, you can't attack the Aether Spark if it's equipped to a creature, which makes a lot of sense. And when you do connect with that creature, you'll put a ton of loyalty on it, right? If you connect for 10, you'll put 10 loyalty on it. Now, it doesn't have, like, a game warping ability, but -10 to add 10 mana of any one color. You should be able, if you build your deck in the right way, to finish the game with that much mana, or cast a huge, like, X spell to just, like, have a huge board all of a sudden, or just do, like, hella damage, or just, you should be able to completely stabilize or greatly get ahead and almost win, or just win if you do get to ultimate. So that's just something to consider. You just need 1 huge connect on a big creature. You're probably going to play this in, like, a green deck or something that cares about equipment, maybe a red deck. Anyway, the +1, when you attach it, well, the +1 attaches it to 1 target creature, sorry. And then you also put a counter on that creature. So, being that you're making your creature larger, which is good for a variety of reasons, you're also representing more damage if you do connect, representing more loyalty. So, not only does the +1 put loyalty on him, but it also kind of represents more down the road. So that's pretty cool. And the -5 on this guy is great because you should get to a point, I would think, where you can potentially do this 2 turns in a row, right? Like, you know, if you just have a massive creature connect, you can do it 1 turn, then do it the next turn. And I think that, like, especially after 2 combat steps, maybe you'll have like 15 loyalty or something on this guy. So you might be able to -10 after you -5, things like that. There's so much potential to this if you're able to enable it, and it's also just very unique. I don't really actually have as much to say as I thought I did, because we haven't really had a tool like this, so it remains to be seen. This is a high removal format, high single target removal format, so equipment is never one of the best card types, but hey, this is one of the better ones I've seen in my experience playing Magic the Gathering, so we'll see what happens. Okay, we're getting close. There's only like 3 more cards left, including this one. So hopefully you stick around through it. But this one here is very interesting. The Last Ride is a 1 swamp 13/13 legendary artifact vehicle. So obviously there's a catch. Since the vehicle, you have to crew it for 2 before you can reap any benefits. And it also happens to get -X, where X is your life total. So for half the game, this is sort of useless because it kind of kills itself if you have more than 13 life. But at a certain point, this is a hugely mana efficient 1-drop that can just be incredibly clutch. If they have a huge 7/7, you can lay this guy, you know, and he comes in as a 10/10, right? And, you know, if you have 3 life left, you barely survived a combat step, and all of a sudden this guy's just like, well, now you can't swing again. But if they're going wide on you, it's not super relevant. But I do like the fact that the pay 2 life draw a card ability on this guy allows you to take advantage of him somewhat, but also gets you closer to being able to potentially crew him and get a huge combat step in. I don't think this card will be good, though. I think that black especially has so many amazing cards right now, and I think this is too gimmicky, too clunky, and I just simply don't think, I don't think the black will care about the artifact part of it. I don't know if there's going to be some sort of serious vehicle synergy, but what's kind of cool is, like, there's a lot of cards that just turn vehicles into artifact creatures, sometimes permanently. So if you are at a point where you can manage your life total and keep this guy at bay, like keep him alive, then he is a huge creature, probably, for 1 mana. So, anyway, not too exciting. Next up, we have Thunderus Velocipede. So, this is an interesting card because, so for 3 mana, you get a 5/5. It has crew 3. It's an artifact vehicle. It also does have trample on it, so it's kind of nice on a 5/5. What it says is each other vehicle and creature you control enters with a counter on it if its mana value 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional counters on it. So if you lay big boys, then they are even bigger, which is kind of hilarious. And depending on the right, like, mana cost, like you could lay like a CMC 5, and it has a huge upside, but maybe the body of the creature isn't that great. Well, this will make it better. And same thing, right? Like, you lay a bunch of smaller creatures, and now they're, like, somewhat relevant and can trade earlier. So it's kind of a funny card, because, like, you'd think it would be the other way around. Like, you'd put 3 counters on the smaller guys and 1 counters on the bigger guys to kind of balance things out and equate them. But it's kind of like a build around, just flood a bunch of huge dudes. And with, like, Gearhulk's Uprising and the Trailblazer guy, that, you know, there's a few cards, even in Standard right now, that are pretty relevant that do care about power 4 or more. So this can obviously fit in those decks. But I don't know if it's, like, essential. But it is only 3 mana for a 5/5. And, yeah, Crew 3 seems a little steep. But mind you, all of the pilot tokens in this set, which there are a lot of cards, if you haven't seen any of the spoilers, there's a lot of cards making those 1/1 pilots that can crew as though their power were 2 greater. So basically they can crew for 3. So that could be good. There could be some really good pilot cards that synergize. Maybe not in, like, mono green. Probably not too many cards like that, but we'll see. Because it does take 2 greens to cast this guy. And lastly, I did take a little bit longer than I thought I would. We do have the Flagship. Now, you may have seen this already, but very quickly, I do want to say that for 7 mana, getting a 7/7 with flying, first strike. Valor's Flagship, the last card of the day. You've probably seen it before, but very quickly, for 7 mana, you do get a 7/7 flying, first strike, lifelink. So that's pretty good. It's not like crazy or anything. It's not like Itali's ETB or anything. But you can crew this guy for 3 with any of those pilots that you make with any of those cards I was just talking about. Notably, this has a cycling effect on it, which I think is the best part. You have to pay 3 mana and an X to discard the card, draw a card. So at least it can, like, if you can't cast a 7-drop early in the game, you can at least get rid of it in the mid-game. And you do get X/1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens, because whenever you cycle this card, that's what X is. I didn't explain that very well. But it's cool that your first flagship that you end up cycling can then the creature that you make with it can then crew your actual flagship that you're wanting to actually use for combat and potentially win the game. So very cool. You know, it feels, it's one of those legendaries where it's like you can run like all 4 copies if you really want to and not feel too bad about it, because the extra ones can always be used for something. And there also is, I will say, a lot of like artifact recursion that we already had and is being introduced. So this is going to be easy to get back. We already have Abuelo's Awakening. There is a really good card that is also 4 mana that got introduced in this set that I forgot the name of. That if you're playing like, you know, 4 Abuelos and 4 of that card, then you have 8 cards in your deck that can reanimate this early, and then, you know, you can put it into your bin with the cycling effect while not going down on a card, while also potentially getting a decent amount of board presence. Also, those little board presence dudes can crew all the vehicles, so this would definitely be a great way. You know, if there's enough good white vehicles, which there is a few, then yeah, this is a serious card. It's not crazy though. It's not like, I don't know. I look at this card and it's like, it's functional. You can build around it. Is it whoa? No, I don't think it's like whoa. I don't think it's like, damn, I can't wait to build around this. I think it's like, I will build around this potentially, eventually, to mess around a little bit, try something new. But I don't think it's gonna be format warping or anything. But pretty cool card. Good design in this set. By the way, thank you for making it all the way through the video. If you are one of those people, wow, thank you. Jesus. Hopefully it wasn't too long-winded, and I will be back to a somewhat normal schedule. I keep making promises, but I reset my computer, restored the whole thing, factory reset, got a new webcam, cleaned up a little bit. Once I figure out some settings and whatnot, I'll be back to pumping out deck techs. So stay tuned for those. By the way, check out any of my old deck techs if you're just looking for something fun, because, you know, my last like 30-40 videos are still standard legal, I would guess. Pretty good decks. You know, and even if you just watch the intro of the decks, that's fine. Just make it through like half the intro or something, get the gist, and maybe skip to the gameplay at the end so you can see some of the cool plays. You know, I usually try to put like a couple highlights in the beginning, but not like all of them, so that it's like worth watching the actual games. So anyway, check those out. I need to put all my shorts into a playlist as well. If you're interested in just mindless short stuff, I have a ton of those. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Good luck on the arena if you're playing at the moment, and I'm sure that this next standard will be pretty cool with the addition of Aetherdrift. I don't think it's going to hurt standard or anything. It can only be a positive, in my opinion. The more cards, the merrier. Even though I'm not a huge commander guy, I do think that's true for even like standard. I like the idea. Standard's like condensed and like you can kind of get a grasp of everything going on, but I also like it to be large too, so there's like a element of entropy, if you will. Anyway, I'm dragging on. Love you guys. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe. Do it. You know you want to. I beg of you. Yes, please. Thank you.